Welcome to Spectrum News at 9. I am Janice Cobham, coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State. Let's take a look at the headlines. Okowa Dati Ahmed say last week's election a sham. Senate debates collation process calls for calm among Nigerians. Plus, Moscow says it foiled Ukraine drone attack on Russian territory. Details of these headlines and more in a moment. Many thanks for joining us tonight on the news. First in our bulletin, Vice Presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Ifeanyi Okowa, and his counterpart in the Labour Party, Yusuf Ahmed Baba Ahmed, have dismissed last week's presidential election as a sham. The duo said this at a joint press conference in Abuja today. Reading from a prepared text, Governor Okowa said that what the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, was doing was by announcing results yet to be uploaded on the INEC portal was illegal and cannot stand. They added that the promise made by the INEC chairman to review the results after the declaration is a joke. In a related development, former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan, ex-Ghanaian President John Mahama, and other members of the West African Elders Forum election mission to Nigeria have appealed for calm in the country while calling on the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) to address the concerns and procedural questions raised so far by different stakeholders. The elders have also urged INEC to comply with the electoral law and the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as a means of retaining the confidence of Nigerians in the ongoing collating of the February 25, 2023 election results. The elders, who stated this in a statement issued in Abuja today, also revealed that they have begun a process of consultation with some of the presidential candidates and other key stakeholders, taking to them a message of peace in order to ensure that there is no breakdown of law and order in the country. Meanwhile, Senate has urged Nigerians to remain peaceful and support the processes leading to the collation and announcement of the 2023 presidential election results in line with extant laws. The Senate resolution followed the adoption of a motion on the build-up to the announcement of election results by the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC). The motion was sponsored by Senator Ibrahim Oloribe of APC Kwara State. Oloribe, citing Orders 41 and 51, presented the motion on the need for calm and appealed to political parties, stakeholders, and Nigerians to abide by the extant laws on the declaration of election results. He said it was important for the Senate to be involved in ensuring harmony among political parties. He, however, urged all political actors, leaders, and Nigerians to remain calm and allow the collation and announcement of presidential and National Assembly elections to proceed based on the provisions of the Electoral Act. In the meantime, the Taraba State branch of the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) has announced former Vice President Abubakar Atiku as the winner of the just concluded presidential election in Taraba State. Announcing the results today, shortly after the collation was brought to an end, the State Collation Officer for the presidential election, Professor Muhammad Ahmed Abdulaziz, announced that the PDP candidate scored a total vote of 189,017 to emerge winner of the exercise. Trailing behind the PDP presidential candidate are the presidential candidates of both the Labour Party LP and the All Progressives Congress APC, who scored 146,315 and 135,165 votes respectively. In a related development, Independent National Electoral Commission has advised aggrieved political parties to seek legal redress if not satisfied with the electoral process, adding that calls for the resignation of INEC Chairman Mahmood Yakubu by the parties is out of place. It would be recalled that the National Coalition agents for the People's Democratic Party, Dino Malaye and Emeka Ihedioha, on Monday walked out of the International Conference Center in Abuja over alleged rigging. Agents of some other parties, including those of the Social Democratic Party, Labour Party and Action Democratic Party, had pointed out same views. They had accused INEC of violating the Electoral Act by going ahead with the results of collation and announcement despite not uploading the results on the INEC result viewing portal. Meanwhile, INEC has cancelled results of 74 polling units in 6 local government areas in Kogi State over thuggery and failed bimodal voter accreditation system that characterized Saturday's presidential and National Assembly polls. The local government involved includes Ekehi, Omala, Ulama Borough, Ofo, Yagba, East, and Igbaji. Reports say the most affected local government area is Okehi, where the state government had reportedly dug some of its roads few days to the election to ward off criminal elements from gaining access to the area. Okehi Collation Officer Dr. Emeka Uguju, while presenting the results to the State Collation Officer Wahab Egbewale at the Kogi Collation Center, said results of 31 polling units were cancelled due to thuggery. In a related development, Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) has declared the Labour Party LP presidential candidate Peter Obi the winner of Saturday's presidential election in Anambra State. Obi, as earlier reported, swept all the 21 local government areas in the state by a wide margin. Professor Nenna Oti, Vice-Chancellor of the Federal University of Technology Owerri Futo, who worked as the Anambra State Collation Officer, announced the results today. And elsewhere, the Electoral Commission has declared the Zamfara Central Senatorial polls and that of Gusau and Tafe Federal Constituency inconclusive. In his declaration, the INEC returning officer of Zamfara Central Senatorial District, Ahmed Galadima of the Federal University Gusau, said the cancellation affected 74 polling units from 19 registration areas of Bungude, Gusau and Safe. Galadima said the total permanent voters' cards collected were 43,881, which is greater than the margin lead of the two political parties with the highest votes. According to the returning officer, the PDP scored 93,120, followed by APC, who got 79,444, with a lead margin of 13,676. Meanwhile, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, in last Saturday's general election, has won the keenly contested polls in Rivers State. The APC flag bearer also swept Niger and Benue states, garnering massive votes in both states. Earlier, there was a strong battle for who would take Rivers State, with the Labour Party and All Progressives Congress going neck and neck. At the same time, Results from 21 local government areas had been collated and the indicated Obi was in the slight lead. However, all that changed when the result for the final 2 local governments areas came in. Prior to the final collation, the APC candidate had polled 148,979 votes, while the LP candidate polled 169,414 votes. But when results from Wike's local government of Obiakpo came in, the figures changed drastically. In another development, Governor Samuel Ortom of Benue State has said there were violations of the Electoral Act in the conduct of both the Presidential and National Assembly elections. This was contained in a statement signed by his Special Advisor on Media and Publicity, Trevor Akase, and issued to newsmen today. Ortom tasked the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) not to ignore the concerns of Nigerians, emphasizing that many of them have questioned the credibility of the elections, so it should take steps to save the country from crisis. And meanwhile, People's Democratic Party, the Labour Party, and the African Democratic Congress have asked the chairman of the Independent Electoral Commission, Mahmoud Yakubu, to step aside. The 3 parties, in a joint press conference today in Abuja, alleged that the February 2023 presidential and National Assembly elections were marred with violence, rigging, and intimidation of voters. The parties demanded the conduct of fresh elections. And moving on, in a related development, the All Progressives Congress has kicked against the call by the People's Democratic Party, the Labour Party, and the African Democratic Congress for the resignation of the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Mahmoud Yakubu. The APC Presidential Campaign Council, in a counter press conference today, shortly after the opposition party's news briefing, said the Presidential and National Assembly elections held on Saturday were credible enough. Speaking, the spokesman for the APC Campaign Council, Festus Keyamo, said it was legally wrong to call for the altering of the electoral process when the results had not even been declared. And still on electoral matters, where the Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC, has backed the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to continue collating Saturday's presidential elections results. The council's chairman, Yabaji Sani, revealed the position during today's resumption of the INEC International National Coalition Center in Abuja. Sani said the personal interest of politicians should not be allowed to truncate the nation's democratic process. In the meantime, the National Broadcasting Commission (NBC) has warned broadcasters covering the general elections to desist from allowing their platforms and facilities to be used for the broadcast of content that may lead to the breakdown of law and order in Nigeria. The Director General of NBC, Balarabe Ilela, gave the warning in a statement titled "Warning to Broadcast Stations in Abuja," while reminding all broadcast stations that they have a duty to promote sustainable democracy in Nigeria. The Commission also warned that appropriate sanctions would be meted out to any airing station that operates outside the confines of the Nigeria Broadcasting Code. Meanwhile, ahead of the final release of the results of the presidential elections, the federal government has warned former President Olusegun Obasanjo not to truncate the poll with an inciting, self-serving and provocative letter. It accused the ex-president of a calculated attempt to undermine the electoral process. It asked Obasanjo and other complainants to allow the legal course on electoral disputes instead of threatening fire and conjuring apocalypse. The Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, made the government's position known against the backdrop of Obasanjo's call for the cancellation of the presidential and National Assembly elections. Mohammed, in a statement in Abuja, said Obasanjo was trying to incite violence. And elsewhere now, two civic tech organizations, ProMed and Policy Shapers, have asked the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) to publish the comprehensive report of the bimodal voter accreditation system (BVAS) across the country, alongside the results of the presidential polls. According to a joint statement signed by Daisy Omokungbe and Ebenezer Wikina, Saturday's presidential poll showed the promise of Nigeria's democracy becoming citizen-driven, participatory, and energetic. The organizations say, having watched and read the reports of events in the elections, it appears that INEC has not effectively lived up to its obligations and mandates to Nigerians as defined in its 2023 electoral guidelines and the 2022 Electoral Act. Away from that, President Muhammadu Buhari has written to the Senate to confirm Anthony Ojukwu for reappointment as the Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission. According to the letter read at the plenary by Senate President Ahmed Lawan today, the reappointment is for 5 years and would be Ojukwu's final term in the position. Also, in another letter dated February 1, 2023, the President also sought confirmation of the appointment of Justice Stanley Lawal as the substantive President of the Customary Court of Appeal, Abuja. The confirmation, according to the President, is in pursuance to Section 266, subsection 1 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as amended. In a separate development, Google has announced application for the third cohort of its Black Founders Fund for startups in Africa and Europe. This was made known in a statement by the head of Startup Ecosystem, Google Sub-Saharan Africa, Folarin Ayubusi, today in Lagos. He disclosed the technology company would designate $4 million to support eligible Black-funded startups this year. And still to come in the news, Elon Musk returns as world's richest person, makes $6.98 billion. To stay with us.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
Every day, we bring you up-to-date information on topical issues affecting the common Nigerian, from issues on politics,
hello Nigeria, I remain committed.
Security, education, health, lifestyle, and so much more. Join Janice Kobum and Uyai Anyekan every weekday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Rise and Shine Daily, exclusive on Spectrum Television. Many thanks for still being there. Now to the rest of our stories. Moving now to Africa, where a French court ruled today rejecting a landmark lawsuit against oil giant Total Energies that accused it of failing to protect people and the environment as it pursues oil projects in Uganda and Tanzania. According to reports, the world's longest heated oil pipeline will pass through forest reserves and game parks before returning alongside Lake Victoria. The case was brought by 6 French and Ugandan activist groups in 2018, accusing the French company of not doing all it could to protect people and the local environment during the development of the Tilenga oil project and the East African crude oil pipelines. The NGOs argue the pipeline project failed to adhere to the Duty of Vigilance Act, a 2017 French law that compels larger companies to avoid grave harm to human rights, health, safety, and the environment. And still in Africa now, French President Emmanuel Macron has unveiled his country's changing economic and military strategy in Africa as France's influence substantially declines on the continent. Reports say Macron is expected to call for a more balanced partnership with African nations in a speech at the Élysées presidential palace before he begins an ambitious Africa trip on Wednesday to Gabon, Angola, the Republic of Congo. Meanwhile, the LAC has stressed that Macron is visiting Gabon mostly to attend a major climate-related summit focusing on the preservation of forests. According to LAC, he will also seek to show France's attachment to improving economic and cultural relations with 2 French-speaking countries, the neighboring Republic of Congo. Meanwhile, Algerian president has received former Malian rebels who had signed an important peace agreement in 2015 under the aegis of Alger, who said they were seeking to break the impasse and the status quo in full access of tension with the authorities of Bamako. Algeria, which shares some 1,400 kilometers of borders with its southern neighbor, took an active part in the peace agreement signed in 2015 with the Independence Rebellion to end the war in Mali. According to reports, the peace agreement, considered by some Malians, is seen as an essential component of a return to political and military stability in the immense country destabilized by the outbreak of separatist and jihadist insurgency in 2012. And elsewhere, the co-founder of one of Senegal's most famous bands, Touré Kunda, has died in Paris at the age of 73. Ismaïla Touré formed the group with his brother in the 1970s. Much of the time was spent in France, where they sang in 6 languages, blending southern Senegalese melodies with rock, reggae, and jazz. The group collaborated with other well-known musicians in bands including Carlos Santana and Talking Heads. Ismaïla Touré was a social activist campaigning for the rights of children and the homeless. And may soul rest in peace. Moving on now to the foreign scene, the U.S. Supreme Court had arguments today in a challenge to President Joe Biden's plan to raise nearly $400 billion of students' debt, with all eyes on how far the conservative-dominated bench is willing to go to override the Democratic leader. The court's ruling, expected before June 30, will decide whether millions of Africans will see up to $20,000 of debt disappear, but could also have implications for future presidential elections. About 200 protesters gathered outside the court, carrying signs backing Biden's policy. Meanwhile, Lamar Brooks, 22, an African-American student from Baltimore, said he already had $18,000 of debt and expected the sum to rocket as he hopes to study to become a psychiatrist. And still on the foreign scene, the United States has announced a crackdown of unlawful imports of xylazine, an animal tranquilizer known as the zombie drug, and which is increasingly linked to overdose deaths. Xylazine, which also goes by the street name Trank, has recently been found in illicitly manufactured fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, and other drugs, presenting a growing public health concern. In a statement, this action aims to prevent the drug from entering the U.S. markets for illicit purposes while maintaining availability for its legitimate uses in animals. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, the percentage of all drugs overdose deaths, including involving xylazine, increased from 2% to 26% in the northwest state of Pennsylvania from 2015 to 2020. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the situation in the eastern city of Bakhmut is getting more challenging. Zelensky said Russia is constantly destroying everything that can be used to protect the country's position, to secure and defend it. According to him, there were more than 300 attacks from various types of artillery and multiple rockets launched on the area. Meanwhile, a Ukrainian commander said the situation in the eastern city was extremely difficult due to non-stop Russian assault. And still on the foreign scene, Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal says the country's budget deficit this year is expected to amount to $38 billion, but the U.S. is committing to provide more than $10 billion in budget support by September. Shmyhal said a new platform has been introduced to help coordinate the work of the G7 countries and international financial organizations, including the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, with regards to financial support for Ukraine. He added that during his meeting with the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen in Kyiv, they had discussed the financial and sanctions impact on the Russian budget, as well as continuations and effectiveness of sanctions on the supply of high-tech items to be used in the military sphere of Russia. In the meantime, the Kremlin said it foiled a Ukrainian drone attack on Russian territory overnight as Moscow's forces pressed their offensive in eastern Ukraine, attempting to encircle the fiercely contested city of Bakhmut. The fighting came as Ukraine's head of military intelligence dismissed fears that China was considering supplying arms to Moscow. Russian President Vladimir Putin today ordered officials to tighten control of the border with Ukraine after a spate of drone attacks that Russian authorities blamed on Kyiv delivered a new challenge to Moscow more than a year after its full-scale invasion of its neighbor. While Putin did not refer to any specific attacks in a speech in Moscow, his comments came hours after drone attacks targeted several areas in southern and western Russia, and authorities closed the airspace over St. Petersburg in response to what some reports said was a drone. And elsewhere, New Yorkers woke today to something they have barely seen this winter: snow. The National Weather Service (NWS) measured 1.8 inches of snowfall in Central Park, the first time more than an inch had been recorded there all season. New York usually gets blanketed white at least a couple of times each winter, but unusually mild temperatures have led to a largely snow-free season this year. The flakes, which began Monday evening, brought the seasonal total in Manhattan, our famous green lung, to just 2.2 inches. And meanwhile, the coffins of 64 victims of a devastating migrant shipwreck off Italy's southern coast were laid out today in a local sport hall 5 of them small and white, containing the bodies of the youngest children that died. Flower bouquet adorned each coffin in the building of Croton, while a toy blue car had been laid on the smallest, ready for mourners to pay their last respects. Earlier, the coffins had been opened to allow the identification of the dead, with relatives having flown in from countries including Germany and Austria. According to reports, one woman let out a scream which shattered the silence of the sports hall. A German-speaking man told reporters he was the nephew of an Afghan man who survived but lost his wife and 3 children aged 5, 8, and 12 after paying $30,000 for the family to cross. Meanwhile, a 14-year-old child survived. Quite a sad story there, but it's now time for the latest business and stock market stories. And here is Blyden. Okay.
Thank you, Janet Cobhams. Good evening. It's business news. I am Blyden Ukem. In the news, we begin with Bloomberg Billionaires Index. Elon Musk has regained his position as the richest person in the world after making $6.98 billion in 8 hours of trading on Monday. He lost the title to French billionaire Bernard Arnault on December 8, 2022, following controversy surrounding his Twitter ownership, which led to the sell-off of Tesla shares and a decline in his wealth. Musk had made several attempts to regain the top spot, but fell short as Arnold's wealth grew. On Monday, the share price of Tesla stocks increased by 100% to push his total net worth to $187 billion, according to data from the Bloomberg Billionaire Index. The total amount of currency in circulation in the country Nigeria dropped from 3.29 trillion naira as of the end of October 2022 to 1.38 trillion naira at the end of January 2023 as a result of the naira redesign and its policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria. According to figures obtained from the CBN, this represents a drop of 1.91 trillion naira in the 3-month period. Life Above Poverty organization LAPO says it has disbursed over 70 billion naira to 262,977 clients since 2007 under its LAPO Rural Development Initiative. According to the Executive Director of LAPO NGO, Honestus Obadiora, at the annual media forum in Benin City, the loan was disbursed to clients in 303 branches across 22 states in the country. He also disclosed that under LADI initiative, 23.5 billion naira was disbursed to improve the livelihood of rural farmers as well as support micro businesses between January and December 2022. It's time for the Nigerian stock market report. The bulls dominated trading today. 105 listed equities participated in trading, ending with 36 gainers and 10 losers. A total of 237.17 million shares and 4,435 deals corresponding to a market value of 4.39 billion naira were traded. Compared with the previous trading day, today's data shows 58% improvement in volume, 185% improvement in turnover, and 39% improvement in deals. The current market capitalization of the Nigerian Stock Exchange is 30.4 trillion naira. MRS Oil Nigeria led the gainers with 10% share price appreciation, closing at 36 naira 85 kobo per share. On the losing side, Multiverse Mining and Exploration came out last with an end-of-day price depreciation of 10% at 3 naira 96 kobo per share. Fidelity Bank recorded the highest volume of 40 million shares. Regarding the performance of market indices, The benchmark All-Share Index moved up 477.84 basis points to close at 55,806.26 points. This is all on business news. Back to Janice Cobhams for the rest of the news.
Many thanks for that report, Blyden Ukem. And still to come in the news, LeBron James fared out several weeks with foot injury. Just stay with us.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by them. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court, my lord.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Thanks for still being there. Now to the rest of our stories. In health, public health experts have called for more actions against air and noise pollution from generators, warning that they can increase stress, fuel other mental health issues, and also trigger chronic health problems like high blood pressure. The experts also warn that direct exposure to loud or persistent noise can equally lead to hearing impairment, noting that children are more vulnerable to the adverse health effects of noise pollution. According to them, chronic exposure to fumes coming from generators for about 8 hours a day could cause respiratory diseases, stressing that if not properly managed, the fumes can even choke humans to death. They noted that soundproofing and using renewable energy can help reduce levels of generator noise. And still in health, President Nigerian Cancer Society (NCS) Dr. Adamu Umar says by the end of 2023, about 102,000 Nigerians will have been diagnosed with cancer, hinting that the disease is hitting closer to more Nigerian homes and families than ever. Umar said this in an interview with newsmen in Abuja, noting that it has become imperative to do more to close the care gap for cancer in Nigeria. The NCS president feared that no fewer than 40,000 of the 102,000 Nigerians would survive the disease. According to him, there were just not enough cancer care specialists or cancer care centers to handle the emergencies. He stressed that the National Action on Sugar Reduction Coalition is calling for more policy action to close the care gap. Umar said that cancer incidence and mortality could be prevented if healthcare was prioritized in the country. He called for greater investment in the health of Nigerian citizens. According to him, unless this happens, Nigerians will continue to record disproportionate cancer death. And now over to Isaac for later sports stories.
Well, thank you very much. Well, in sports, LeBron James is feared to be out several weeks with a right foot problem. James is undergoing further testing and conversations to learn the full extent of the injury, which he suffered in the Los Angeles Lakers' victory at the Dallas Mavericks on Sunday. The Lakers previously announced James would miss Tuesday night's game to the Memphis Grizzlies with a sore right foot. James, who is 38, was walking with a noticeable limp following the Mavs game. He fell to the floor in pain late into the third quarter and after driving on Dallas Dwight Powell. James finished Sunday's game scoring 11 of 26 points in the fourth quarter, and the LA won its third game in a row to pull within a game of the number 10 spot in the Western Conference, which represents the final playing spot, and 2.5 games behind Dallas for number 6. Well, in tennis, Britain's Danny Evans retired with injury in his first round match against Croatia's Borna Coric at the Dubai Tennis Championship. The match was leveled at 2-2 in the first set. British number 2 Danny Evans, who is 32, was playing with strapping to an ankle, but there has been no confirmation of the injury which forced him out. He was the only Briton competing in the men's singles after Andy Murray pulled out on Monday through injury. Well, finally, from football, Chelsea's poor season has gone from bad to worse after star defender Thiago Silva suffered a knee ligament damage. Silva limped off in Sunday's 2-0 defeat to Tottenham in the first half after colliding with Harry Kane. The club announced the result of the scan on their website yesterday morning. Silva has been one of the only few Chelsea players who has impressed in an otherwise disastrous season for Chelsea. He is expected to miss Saturday's Premier League clash with Leeds United and the Champions League return leg against Dortmund at Stamford Bridge next week. The former PSG defender recently signed a 1-year contract extension to keep him at Stamford Bridge until 2024. Well, that's it on sports. My name is Isaac.
Many thanks, Isaac, for that report there on sports. On entertainment news, Nigeria's hip-hop giants Burna Boy, Wizkid and Davido have been named among the artists to headline the 2023 Afro Nation concert in Portugal. The organizers, in a post shared across its social media handles, announced the 3 music heavyweights alongside 50 Cent, the US rapper, as its headliners. Afro Nation is an annual event celebrating Africans in diaspora. The festival is arguably one of the biggest music concerts in the world. Meanwhile, this year's edition, tagged Phase 2, is set to hold between July 28 and 30 at the Algarve Portimao in Portugal. And still on entertainment, Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis has warned people to buckle up as he signed a bill giving the state control over Disney's sprawling Orlando theme parks. The bill strips power uniquely held by Disney for over 50 years and enables more oversight by DeSantis' Republican-led legislature. The move is seen as retaliation after Disney opposed state laws curtailing gender and sexuality education. And lastly tonight, Nollywood stars Adeniyi Johnson and Seyi Edun, who have been married for 7 years, have welcomed a set of twins. The couple announced the news on Instagram after praying to God for a child for 7 years following their wedding. Meanwhile, congratulatory messages are currently pouring in for the couple from fans, well-wishers and industry colleagues. The couple started dating in 2016 and got married officially in 2018. And that's all we have for you on Spectrum Television at this time. Do well to follow us on all our social media handles and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website at spectrumtv.ng. You have been watching Spectrum News at 9. My name is Janice Cobham. To have a good night rest.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
One truth.
George Will, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Port Harcourt. I am the State Collation Officer for the presidential election of 25th February 2023 in Delta State. The results for the presidential election held on 25th February 2023 in Delta State. Total number of registered voters: 32,1,697. 32,1,697. Total number of accredited voters: 66,7149. 66,7149. Total number of votes received by the presidential candidates of each of the political parties are as follows. Party A, 979. Party A, 979. Party AA, 229. AA, 229. Party AAC, 357. AAC, 357. Party ADC, 160. ADC, 160. Party ADP, 788.
Please go back to ADC.
As it
ADC.
ADC, that's what I said. ADC. I said ADC 160.
No, look at the figures again.
ADC. No, that is ADP. The next one is ADP.
No, okay. Start the presentation all over.